not included in this list.
So this is funny. I talked to both my friend Abram and also one of my lady friends, Trish. She's this little Brazilian lady. She wants to do the Côte de Boeuf. Now, Côte de Boeuf, for those people who don't know, it's a really big steak. I think theirs are like 32 ounce, and they serve it with the bone marrow too. And I think there's a
Uh,
side of potatoes as well. She said she wants to do that. She's like, oh, we can go there sometime. I was like, you want to eat that? Because she's this like little woman. She's like, oh, I would definitely share that with you. I'm like, okay, we can do it. I'm like, if I get that, like that's all I'm gonna eat for that day. And then I told Abram, and Abram wanted to do the same thing. Where he and I went yesterday to a kosher place. They had the same thing, another Côte de Boeuf, 32 ounces, and we thought about it, but there was a lot of good stuff on the menu, and he wanted to try a bunch of other dishes. So we're like, okay, we'll come back another time and get it. But again, that's one of those things. Like if I get that, that's all I'm eating because it's like 16 ounces a person plus sides, and it's like
yeah.
you gotta come with like it's two people who can eat a lot, or like three or four people and just divide it up. It's a lot.
That's another suggestion to people. If you're going to go to a certain restaurant, it's some food that you haven't had, they're putting quality into it. Don't just treat it like treat it like a partner, a somebody you really care about. Treat it as a good experience. Don't just try to treat it as a side, something on the side, some side fling where you're just like, oh, I'm just going to just pop in, or like, oh, I'm going to eat like all this food before you go in there full. It's if you're going to go to some of these places, it's good to go there when you're actually feeling some hunger. Even a situation where try and just not eat all day and see if you go in there and actually are hungry enough, and also just pace yourself. Don't feel like you have to order something we've mentioned before. And I think this is a good intro to the last one because this is something Stephen had mentioned, wanted to try this before, but he never really had any space for this because, as he mentioned, the food's been really rich. So just the other day, he finally said, okay, let me go out and have this. That's going to be the actual dessert that we talk about. But sometimes you could go to a restaurant and say, I'm just going to go get an appetizer and jump right to dessert. Sometimes you say, maybe I just thought about getting this dessert from there. I'm going to get the dessert first. And if I still feel hungry, maybe I'll get an entree. So this is the kind of thing. Don't feel like just because you go, you have to get all three and you have to feed yourself in that sense. And when you actually have the food for the food itself and eat to satiation. Satiation. Is it satiation? Or is it satiation? Satiation.
Satiation, I think.
Yeah, eat to
I'm
satiation.
satiated. Yeah.
And not eat to like the whole like Thanksgiving, like all like unbuckle the belt buckle type thing. It's just, some of these places. There's definitely places for that. There's buffets and things like that where sometimes you just go and it's like one of my friends used to say. One of my friends, Aaron, this guy from DC, he went to like DC Dunbar. I was playing football with him in West Virginia, and he was telling me about the trips that their football team used to take to play different teams and things like that, normally in the countryside and things like that, and in more rural areas. And sometimes they'd go to a buffet, and then they'd be like, they would talk to certain players who they knew this player was not going to play the next day. It was like a bench player or something. And he was like, man, you ain't going to play today. You might as well just eat up. Like, kill yourself. Kill yourself. He said, like, you just go there, you just feed yourself until you're just bloated. Because if you're going to play the next day, you don't want to be too heavy. But there's times and places for that. But I think with some of these restaurants, and sometimes it's just like, hey, you go there and you eat to feel the food and spread your time. Don't go when you feel like, okay, it's a situation where I have to be there in and out in an hour. Some of these places you literally go. And that's one of my favorite experiences in Italy was going with some friends and going to this small town. I think it was a group that we met via couch surfing because Italy was living in Rome at this time. Rome, as you would imagine, is a really big place for couch surfing because a lot of tourism coming through there. But we went to some couch surfing group in some small little town outside of Rome proper, and they had this whole like Italian meal thing, and it was like a 6-hour dinner or so. It's just like these benches outside, there's music playing, people talking, moving between benches, and it's like in Italy, some places it's a very broken down meal. It's like just the salad. It's like plain salad. Then just the soup comes out. Then just the soup. Then it's just the meat, like literally just the meat. Then just like some starch comes out. Then just like maybe some basic dessert, and then after that some coffee or tea or some grappa or some things like that after. So it's almost like every hour there's like some kind of single meal brought out, but it's a process. And with some of these things, I think you enjoy them in that thing, the presentation, the ambiance, the other things, and the things to actually take in with that. Yeah. Any
Well, I was
thoughts
gonna
on
say
that?
I don't know if I told you this story, but I'm trying to eat earlier, but also not eat as much. And like the people who work at Minette always laugh because they're like, "Oh yeah, you always pace yourself," and I'm like, "I know," because I've it's that whole that's one of the dark sides of ordering food when you're hungry. Like everything looks good and like it's easy to like, you know, your eyes are bigger than your stomach and all this. I went there late one night and I had both the bone marrow and the steak frites. I only had 2 glasses of wine. I felt like it felt worse than a hangover the next day. Like I was like, it was just like, you know, you go to sleep with like all that stuff in your stomach. Like I felt like death and I'm like, yeah, I can't do this again. So it's like, what I'll do is I'll go there. I'll be like, I'll have one thing. I'll see how I feel. And then like something like the lobster was kind of small. So I'm like, all right, I'll order something else. When I went once, I had the 3 appetizers, the vol au vent, the foie gras, and the tartare, but each one is like that big. So it's like, you know, it's not that much food, but it's like I try to pace myself accordingly. And, you know, I always come back, like going to the place with Abram yesterday, like, oh, we'll come back and get the Cote de Boeuf and try other things. Like he got like 2 appetizers and like a small entree. Like I like doing stuff like that, but like, you know, as far as we know, I mean, these places will be there. So it's like you can go back and get other stuff. Like you don't have to order everything at once, you know?
That is a good, that's a good simple thing there that I didn't think of. Just, if you're ordering, sometimes you don't have to. I know some restaurants, they want you to put your full order in ahead of time. They normally do the dessert after you've eaten, but sometimes, just order the appetizer and then see how you feel after. That could be a smart thing. Instead of ordering appetizer and the meal, just have the table order the appetizer, get the appetizer. And I know normally in some places they know the meal takes longer, so you order the appetizer. The appetizer takes like 15 minutes to cook, and then the meal normally takes 30 minutes, so you order them at the same time, then you still only 15 minutes between the meals. But if you have more of a longer time between what you're eating, and it could be good to actually order the appetizer and then order your meal after you've had the appetizer to get a better idea. That's something to consider. I know it won't be something available to anyone, but if you have a more flexible schedule and more control over that, you can make the time for that, and that might improve or alter your experience dining out and things like that. But definitely one thing is sometimes just go for dessert. You don't have to get everything else. Sometimes start with a dessert. That's one of the suggestions that I have. If you have nothing else to say, tell us about this dessert, because I think we'll try to put the video up. Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.